The focus today is NFPA 101 Life Safety Code, ADA, and healthcare facilities, and how compliance is made easy with low-profile fire extinguishers. Specific to NFPA 101, we're going to talk about the 2012 edition, which is now a requirement for compliance now with various healthcare facilities, and we'll get into that in a minute. So we're the founder of low-profile fire extinguishers and the inventor of them. So our extinguishers are not round. We're slender profile. We make a few different models right now that are all 10-pound units. They vary from between 3 inches deep to 3.5 inches deep front to back, and 10 inches wide or 8 inches wide. And we have a few different form factors because they have different value propositions and different benefits, and we'll see that later in the presentation. Oval Innovation solves many common problems related to fire extinguishers and NFPA 101 compliance. And there's a lot of things that are required now with the 2012 edition in healthcare facilities. But we're going to try to keep the presentation focused to fire extinguishers and how it relates to NFPA 101. Because as we all know, there's a lot of new requirements. I mean, outside of fire extinguishers, there's fire door inspections and sprinkler inspections and fire alarm protocols that have all changed and are new. But we're going to try to keep the focus here to how NFPA 101 relates to fire extinguishers under the new guidelines. So who's required to comply with the 2012 edition of the Life Safety Code? And it's all of the Joint Commission accredited healthcare organizations. And if you're not accredited by the Joint Commission, it's any other healthcare facility which receives monies from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or as we refer to as CMS. So the healthcare facilities that must comply include hospitals, ambulatory surgical centers, behavioral healthcare, critical access hospitals, hospice, inpatient healthcare facilities, and long-term care facilities, such as some of the long-term senior living in that. So one of the questions in regards to the year 2012 edition of Life Safety Code is what's different from complying with the prior requirements? And the last set of requirements, the last version of Life Safety Code that we all had to comply with was the year 2000 edition. So there's been 12 years of changes that have occurred since the 2000 edition. You know, there's every 3 years the Life Safety Code gets revised. There's presently a year 2015 edition out there that you can review. However, CMS is only requiring compliance with the 2012 edition right now. So a few things specific to extinguishers that are new now in the 2012 edition, new or different, is some of the processes for compliance, documentation, remedial measures, and inventory. So I use for an example, one thing I've learned is there's this new SAFER matrix that's replacing the old plan for improvement process. Something else that is different is they're now allowing a 20 to 40 day spacing for monthly inspections. And what that means specifically is for fire extinguishers, you're allowed with your own personnel to do a monthly inspection, but the annual inspection is still required to be done by a licensed service technician in the states where it's licensed, or if it's not a licensed state. I think there's about 7 states that don't license fire extinguisher inspectors. They still need to be a professional that follows the NFPA 10 guidelines for inspections. So the annual is still an outside party, but you're allowed to do your monthly inspections yourself, and that's required. And it's required every 30 days. So the question on the 30-day inspection was, what if in the past you did 1 month, you did it in 28 days, and another month you're at 32 days. It wasn't exactly every 30 days. So what the 2012 Life Safety Code allows is if in 1 month it's within 20 days and the next month it's 40, that's okay. However, you're not allowed to inspect every 40 days. And that's one of the points of that need to be clarified. is it still needs to basically average out to every 30 days, but you're allowed a 20 to 40 day window on the inspections. And the next thing is to comply with the element of performance program, the extinguisher should be inventoried with a unique ID, location, type, size, maintenance history, and deficiency history. If you have an outside party doing this for you, even on your monthlies, you really need to have like a matrix or a spreadsheet that clearly organizes all the inventoried fire extinguishers for these items. And again, every extinguisher and every location needs to have a unique ID. So you can't just say I've got 40 fire extinguishers in my senior living facility anymore. You know, you need to say room 102, there's an extinguisher there. In corridor 105, if there's 3 extinguishers, it's the north, the central, and the west, things like that. So you need to identify with a unique ID and then document the location as part of an inventory program. So the inventory is also important because we're supposed to start documenting a record of deficiencies. And this relates to the Environmental Care Committee's review of deficiencies and resolutions and trying to find patterns. A great example is if there's an extinguisher by an exit door that's surface mounted and it falls to the floor and it gets damaged, well, that event and that damage should be recorded as part of the monthly inspection or part of a problem and resolution process. But 2 months later, if that same one falls again, it should get documented again. And what happens is it allows the Environmental Care Committee to see that a pattern happened. You saw that one extinguisher in particular, for some reason, it keeps getting knocked off its hook and falling to the floor. And then we look at it closer and say, what can we do to make that better so it doesn't happen again? Again, that relates back to why the inventory and the ID is so important now, and tracking all these deficiencies and how fast and quickly we resolve them. I know with some items now, like sprinkler systems, there's so many hours until it can be repaired and back online. I think it's 10 hours. Fire alarm, maybe 4 hours. And there's a lot of rules now and new standards within the Life Safety Code specific to sprinklers and fire alarms that were different than before. I'm not sure what the shot clock or the time frame is to repair an extinguisher. Again, some of the differences with the prior requirements, protruding and projecting object limits for dimensions. And I use both words protruding and projecting because protruding is more the word that's used within the ADA and the International Fire Code and the local accessibility building code standards. But projecting is the word that gets used in NFPA-101. It's really the same thing, but the words get used differently in different standards. Clutter in the path of egress, that's a big change on how they're trying to reduce the clutter and a lot of the new rules for projecting objects, and that relates back to the fire extinguishers and cabinets. And another thing that I thought was interesting is the requirement for BBI, or basic building information, and that appears to be the need to maintain current as-built plans of your facility. So if you have a newer facility, you probably have a really nice BIM model that was handed over to you by the contractor. For existing and older facilities, it appears that they want to have current as-built that are constantly updated, in-house now as part of managing the life safety code requirements. So how does OVAL help with some of these new requirements? And so we like to say that we enable easy compliance. So the first problem we solved is the protruding object violations. There's 2 dimensions that we need to manage now between both the Life Safety Code and the ADA. When an extinguisher is surface mounted, we're going to talk about cabinets next, but just a surface mounted fire extinguisher. Under the Life Safety Code, what it says is that in new facilities, for objects that are below 38 inches, the things aren't supposed to project more than 4.5 inches off the wall for non-continuous protruding objects. However, when we're above the handrail at 38 inches in a new facility, what the Life Safety Code says is that things can protrude as much as 6 inches. However, and on the next slide I'll show you, on the Federal Register it clarifies that we still need to apply the ADA's 4-inch protruding object limit. In a nutshell, in a new facility, things below 38 inches can't stick out more than 4.5 inches. Things above 38 inches can't protrude more than 4. If it's an existing facility, because there's a separate section in the Life Safety Code for existing facilities versus new facilities, the cutoff for 4.5 to 4 inches is the handrail height. So in existing facilities, objects below the handrail can stick out up to 4.5 inches. Objects above the handrail can stick out up to 4 inches. It really relates both to extinguishers if surface mounted and cabinets. Because if you have cabinets that are surface-mounted cabinets with a round fire extinguisher, all of them, for a surface-mounted cabinet, they all protrude more than 4.5 inches. And those no longer are able to be compliant. Semi-recessed cabinets, such as the one in the photo here that we see, this one's actually compliant. That one is probably protruding 2.5 inches is what it looks like. It's compliant with both the ADA and the Life Safety Code. We like to say it could have been better because with oval, it could have been fully recessed, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But again, now if we talk about surface-mounted fire extinguishers, for 10-pound extinguishers, oval is the only extinguisher that you can surface mount under these guidelines. So a quick story, we just had a hospital in Fresno, California that had fully recessed cabinets that were installed really high. They were up at like 6 feet to the handle. And under an ADA review, they were required to lower them all. Now, this is an older hospital with a lot of masonry, and it was going to cost probably over $2,000 a piece to lower each cabinet. They found us and ran it by the Joint Commission inspector, and they were allowed to surface mount us because we're the only extinguisher that protrudes less than 4 inches. So it was a lot easier and cost-effective way to solve their problem for their fire extinguishers. Again, we're the only 10-pound extinguisher that can be surface mounted. There's a few 5-pounders out there that will stick out exactly 4.5 inches. But the thing is, in most healthcare facilities, under the duty hazard requirements, because we're ordinary or high duty hazard under the NFPA guidelines, rarely do we use 5-pound fire extinguishers, multi-purpose type in healthcare facilities. I wanted to share this, and this is a useful link also that you can refer back to within the presentation, is that there has already been a clarification in regards to how the Life Safety Code says for objects above the handrail or 38 inches that they're allowed to stick out 6 inches. Well, this is from the Federal Register where they've already answered the question saying you still need to apply the 4-inch protruding object limits of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So what the ADA says is that if the bottom leading edge of an object is higher than 27 inches off the floor, it's not allowed to protrude more than 4 inches into the means of egress, the path of travel, etc. So we really need to take both the ADA and the Life Safety Code together to get our window of protruding objects, which is, again, below 38 inches or the handrail, you can stick out up to 4.5 inches. Above that height, you can stick out up to 4. How do we help solve that? So our extinguishers are the only ones that never protrude more than 4 inches when surface mounted. And this graphic here shows it installed on a round column. Even on a round column, if you measure off to the side, we don't protrude more than 4 inches. In regards to our cabinets, we allow you to put a fully recessed, fire-rated cabinet into a standard 3 5/8 inch stud cavity. Fire-rated cabinets have a thicker sidewall. In this graphic, what you can see is 5/8 gypsum board, 3 5/8 studs, kind of a typical detail on a lot of corridors in a 2-hour or a 1-hour wall assembly. We also allow you to fit a non-fire-rated cabinet into a standard 2.5 inch stud cavity or 6 inch masonry with a non-fire-rated cabinet. Now in healthcare, there's not a lot of partitions that aren't fire-rated. In a lot of office facilities, things like that, only 15% of your cabinets are fire-rated in typical construction. Again, these are the constraints that we help work in. So if you have existing semi-recessed cabinets in your facilities, a lot of times, even if they're complying with the protruding rules, a lot of times they still get beat up and damaged on the corners from the carts, the gurneys, things like that. If you have damage, but you may not have a protruding object problem, we allow you to make it even better and retrofit really easy. Swap out the cabinet, put a fully recessed cabinet in. So here's a nice graphic that shows a 2.5 inch stud cavity with a fully recessed cabinet. That's in the upper left-hand corner. The graphic on the right is a fully recessed cabinet, non-fire rated, installed into a standard 6-inch masonry wall. A few other things about our extinguishers. We also hope to reduce some broken toes and lawsuits and settlements. It's more of an issue that happens in retail. The standard fire extinguisher hook, they comply with the codes, they're allowed, but what we found is the extinguishers fall off them a lot when we get bumped into. Where this could be relevant for a healthcare facility, maybe in your parking decks and some of your common areas, maybe your areas where you've got a convenient care clinic or something attached or a pharmacy attached that may not be under the healthcare rules, but it's an attached facility that has a few different code requirements. So if you're surface mounting in those facilities, in those areas, especially parking decks, I keep coming back to that, they get knocked off the hooks a lot. And the extinguisher get damaged, and sometimes they land on somebody's foot. Our hook, we've got the best hook in the industry. On the left, you'll see the image of it. It's a nice little button. It is very durable, and our extinguisher swivels around it when bumped into. So here's a graphic that we share that shows a shopping cart impacting the extinguisher, and the extinguisher moves, but it doesn't fall off easily. That's something else that we do a little differently, and where we try to make things safer. We are testing our extinguishers in the next few weeks to receive an MRI 7 Tesla compliant rating. So where we could fall into your facilities is outside of the MRI suite, in the corridors. I know some healthcare facilities like to make everything on the same floor as the MRI suite to be MRI compliant. You would not put us inside the room with the MRI machine because we're a dry chemical fire extinguisher. But for outside the suite, ABC dry chem is commonly used, and there's not a lot of other options. There's a few other units out there on the market. Most of them are small 5-pound units, but we'll have a nice 10-pound unit that you can either put in a cabinet or surface mount outside the MRI suite, and it'll be compliant. So for designers and facilities managers, on our website we have all of our product literature, but we also have Revit files, SketchUp files, and AutoCAD files to help update your current BIM models. If you're managing your BIM model, we have 3-dimensional objects. We have specifications available within Archon Master Spec and Product Master Spec. And we also have on our website, it's an online calculator where you can plug in the square footage, your duty hazard requirements, and the rating of the extinguisher you would like to use, and we'll help tell you if you're meeting the minimum code requirement for quantity of extinguishers. So we've put together a really nice online calculator to help your facilities departments just make sure that you're fully in compliance, because we found, and this happens where a lot of facilities use 5-pound fire extinguishers, and the challenge is very commonly if you're using 5-pound fire extinguishers, you don't have enough because people aren't doing the calculations, the NFPA-10 calculations correctly. Because we all know you're supposed to have a fire extinguisher every 75 feet. However, there's also a square footage calculation depending on the size of the extinguisher as to how many square feet it's allowed to cover. And that gets missed a lot. So if any of you are using 5-pound fire extinguishers, especially, I really suggest that you visit our online calculator to see if you're compliant with the quantity of extinguishers. A few other things that we've invented and we're bringing to market within the next 12 months is a solution for standpipe hose connections. This is taken in a retail store. There's this brass valve. It's a 2.5-inch brass valve that you hook a fire hose up to inside a building. For ones that aren't inside cabinets right now, almost all of them violate the ADA and the life safety code for protruding objects. Here's an example of one that was hit by a forklift and damaged. But this is also, you'll see this a lot in your parking structures as well. Again, they don't comply. We have a solution that protrudes less than 4 inches front to back. So it'll be the first fully compliant standpipe outlet valve. And technically and legally, once we get this to market, the other ones are required to be retrofitted. Once a readily achievable solution exists for something, you're required to do it, and previous violations of the ADA aren't grandfathered. And here's a sneak peek from the front and the side view. Again, it's a little bit more elegant also, but it protrudes less than 4 inches. We're made in Illinois. All of our content is 85% plus domestic content, made in the USA. The only thing from overseas is our powder. Lastly, if any of you are going to the ASHI show in Indianapolis, we're going to be there on August 7th and 8th exhibiting. So if you're there, please stop by and visit us.
So Kevin, a couple questions that have come up. Is Oval the only company that makes non-round fire extinguishers?
So we are the manufacturer. We hold the IP, the patents on it. So JL Industries, not only do they make cabinets, but they also have a private label version of our extinguishers. So it's they call it their Orbit line. So if you look for Orbit fire extinguishers at JL Industries, they can also sell them as a package with the cabinets. And Strike First is, they're going to have a private label line as well called the Optim line of fire extinguishers.
Okay, great. Another question that came in, is it possible to retrofit an Oval extinguisher into an existing opening? So if there's already a cabinet, a semi-recessed cabinet, could you retrofit an Oval into that same spot?
Yes, and it's simple if the cabinet is a 12 by 27 inch module, because we function, there's different module sizes standard in the industry for fire extinguisher cabinets. So if it's a 12 by 27 inch module, it's a very simple retrofit. If it's a smaller module, it may be as simple, if you're in studs and drywall, as taking a razor knife, carving the drywall out, reaching in and adjusting the blocking that may be in there already, and then retrofitting the cabinet. If it's a larger opening, bigger than 12 by 27, well then there's some drywall work or some patching work involved, but it's unlikely that the opening would be larger. If you're in masonry, it's still not terribly difficult now with the saws, the small saws with the vacuums attached. It can be carved out in the cement block, fairly clean and easy now to retrofit and install a cabinet.
Can Oval be mounted on a column and stay within the protrusion requirements?
Yes. So it was our slide number 9, and that's our H model fire extinguisher. It's a 10H ABC. That model is 8 inches wide by 3.5 inches deep front to back. And this is why we have the graphic we're sharing here, is that we protrude less than 4 inches. Now, with our J model extinguisher, it's 3 inches deep by 10 inches wide. It's great. You can surface mount it on walls, but if you put that on a round column, it may protrude more than 4 inches if you measure at an angle. This is actually why we have 2 different form factors. That 3 by 10 extinguisher fits nicely inside the cabinet. The 8 inch wide by 3.5, it surface mounts better because it never sticks out more than 4 inches.
Okay, and then the last question that came in, are Oval brand extinguishers UL listed?
Yes, yeah, we're UL listed. We're also ULC listed for our friends north of the border in Canada. And again, we're also California listed, so we're listed with the State Fire Marshal's Office, CAL FIRE out in California. It's not a requirement to be listed with the State Fire Marshal, but we thought it was a good practice, and they're starting to reach out to manufacturers asking us to get listed because they may make a change soon and require a separate California listing. So we were proactive on that.
Okay, unless anyone else has any other questions, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the week.